Hi, Will. How are you doing?
I'm great today. Thanks.
Good. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what your life was like before you were treated for sleep apnea.
Yeah. So I can go back to my childhood. I didn't know it at the time, but back when I was a kid, I had sleep apnea. I was super skinny. People used to, comment on how many ribs I had because they could count them. I did really poorly in school. I had a twin sister, and so she got A's and I got D's, and went all the way through grade school. And I just thought, I don't know what's wrong with me. I got in trouble for being hyperactive. That's what they called it at the time. And without really knowing it by accident, I had my tonsils out because everybody had their tonsils out in the sixth grade kind of thing. I think it was the way doctors made money. Anyway, so suddenly my grades went from D's to B's and then A's, and I did well in school after that. And I just thought, oh, I grew out of whatever problem I had. Yeah. And then when I was in my 40s, my early 40s, I went on a trip with my father. Actually, when I was 35, I went on a trip with my father, and we went to Australia together, and my father would stop breathing all night long. And I thought, oh my God, I don't know what that is, but it doesn't look good. And my father had all these problems. He had diabetes, he had GERD, some depression, that kind of stuff. And so I thought, wow, that guy's just unlucky, right? And then when I was in my 40s, I couldn't remember people's names at work, even though I had worked with them for 4 or 5 years. And so I went to be diagnosed. And they said, you have sleep apnea. And then that's when I learned all about it.
I see. Well, after you had your diagnosis and then treatment was set up for you, what was it like?
Well, for me, it was a long, gradual thing. I started out with a mouth guard and oral appliance, and then I kind of graduated to a CPAP. Well, I had surgery. I thought, oh, I'm going to have surgery. And the surgery I had was kind of experimental, didn't really do the job. Then I ended up on CPAP. But I just realized that, I needed to treat myself so I didn't end up with the same problems my father had. And by the way, my sister and, my nephew, and now my eldest son. So I just wanted to not have as many negative consequences from it. So that's why I treat myself.
Well, what has worked for you?
I think just being diligent, and getting over the stigma. When I first got my first CPAP machine, I was embarrassed. And I would hide it every night. I put it in a drawer because I didn't want people to think, oh, I'm sick. And so what worked for me was to go from being kind of a victim mentality to thinking that I'm like a victor, and I called myself the apnea avenger. And to avenge something is to, crush it out with asymmetrical force. And so I kind of liked that idea. And so I actually went from just talking to a few people to trying to help many, many people, and that actually helped me.
Sort of an empowerment, really, if you think about it.
It's sort of accepting it and then running with it.
Well, what has not worked? What were a few things that you tried that just maybe didn't work for you?
I think all the therapies are sort of substandard, to be honest. Oral appliance works sometimes for some people, and some even better for other people, but not great. And then the surgeries did not work. I had my tongue moved forward. I had my nasal area microwaved, and I had my uvula sewn to the top of my mouth. And even that only got me about halfway, so it cut my apnea by about half. And one of the things that really didn't work for me is the doctor said, okay, you have a 70% chance of cure. So I said, well, they're probably sandbagging, so why not go for it? And then they said, okay, well, it didn't work as well as we thought, but under the definition of cure, you're cured. And I'm like, how can I be cured? They said, well, if we cut whatever it is in half, that's considered a cure. I'm like, well, okay, what didn't work for me is the medical profession didn't tell me that before I had the surgery, and had to lay in bed for almost a month.
If you were to tell someone that is just facing diagnosis, maybe they have a new diagnosis, maybe they haven't been diagnosed, but they have the symptoms, what would your advice be for this patient or friend that is starting out in the journey?
Well, it happens all the time because people ask me, and I'll give them some advice, and they won't do anything about it. So the first thing is you got to get over the denial aspect of it. It is really is a huge denial issue because you're asleep, so you don't believe it. Even though people tell you that's happening, it's hard for you to believe. So you just have to get over that, and you have to believe people. And the second thing is, until a cure comes along, then you need to do the best you can. And so just like with eyeglasses, you put your eyeglasses on, we talked about the other day, and then you take them off at night, you put your mask on, you take it off in the daytime. It's just a way of treating your problem until something else comes along, like LASIX. You know, now you don't have to wear eyeglasses. Well, something eventually we hope will come along for sleep apnea. But while we're waiting, we need to do something that's that's going to be helpful to us and others, because it really is a home wrecker. If you don't treat it, it's really hard on the family. It's hard on the extended family. And why do that to people? So my advice is treat yourself with whatever is available today.
It's not a cookie cutter disease, is it?
No, I used to think there was a magic bullet, and I realized there's no magic bullet right now. It's a magic shotgun, and you have to try multiple things. That's the other advice I give people is try combinations of things. I wear an oral appliance and a CPAP mask, or sometimes I wear an oral appliance and a nasal stent, and sometimes I don't wear my oral appliance. I just wear my CPAP, and so different combinations work. And since you're going to have it for a while, unless you're lucky and it goes away, usually from diet or something like that, become an expert. Just really become an expert on the whole thing. And don't let the medical profession basically tell you what to do, because it'll probably be good, but I've noticed that sometimes you get bad advice. So you have to become your own advocate.
Well, thank you so much, Will.
Thank you.